So now, once we have this all aligned to the center, we can shrink the browser down to a very small width before things start getting funky again. And that funkiness happens right about here at about 440 or 50 pixels, where we stop seeing the account link here. So we'd have to figure out if we're going to plan for devices smaller than this, in which case we'd want to add one more breakpoint right here in order to allow these elements to wrap to the next line. But for now, let's make these styles permanent. So again, we're changing the styles on our site footer social nav and also on the contact info. Now our breakpoint here is going to be again at 1010 pixels. And because we're going to be using it in multiple places, let's add a variable here inside of our site footer for it. Now, naming our breakpoints isn't always intuitive. I mean, what should we call this exactly? Switch to one column breakpoint? Well, it does seem a little bit verbose, but it's not bad in terms of describing what it's for. How about we make that just a little bit shorter and call it one column breakpoint? And we'll set this value to 1010 pixels. And first we're going to use this in our social navigation. The way we ended up setting a breakpoint before was using the breakpoint extension for Sass. So let's do the same thing here. Let's review the syntax by going to our slideshow partial. And here's the syntax. So we add a breakpoint and then we pass a value to it. Now this will create a min-width media query. What we're doing here, however, by starting big and going small is the opposite of the approach that we take with min-width. What we want to say here is if the browser has a maximum width of 1010 pixels, we want to override the styles to use this one column layout. And so that's going to use the max width property. Now we can still do that with breakpoint. We can see what the syntax would look like if we do a quick search in the breakpoint documentation. So I'm going to do a search for Sass breakpoint docs. And here's our breakpoint site, and I'm going to do a browser search for max width, and here we get the syntax. And so we can just use max width and then the measurement here. Whereas if we just use a pixel value, it will assume min width. Okay, I'll close this out. I'll jump back here to our code. And right now we're adjusting our social icons. So I'll do a quick search for social to jump to it. And we're gonna add a breakpoint. Again, we're going to include it right where we would include the default styles for this element. If we were building a media query, in contrast, we would have to add a media query outside of this element and then add a new selector for this element to override the styles. So this is what people find more intuitive. So we'll add the include statement and then breakpoint, and then we'll pass it max width, and we'll set the value to our one column breakpoint here. We'll create an opening and closing bracket, and we'll set the float to none. Again, we're overriding the float to nothing. And I think if we go back to the browser, we'd see that we want to set the text align to center and the margin bottom to 20 pixels. So we'll set text align, center, and then margin bottom. And we'll use a relative value for this since it should be impacted by the size of the text. So we'll use px2rem and pass it 20 pixels. Okay, let's save this, go back to the browser and refresh. And now if we extend our browser out, we have the 3-column layout. And then as we get smaller and we hit that breakpoint, it bumps this into the single column. I don't know about you, but I really enjoy seeing these breakpoints actually work. All right, so now we need to move the styles from here on over. And I believe the styles were identical. So I'm gonna copy this breakpoint here, and I'll navigate to our contact info, which is right here, and I'll paste in our breakpoint. I'll save it and go back to the browser and refresh. And so here's our single column layout, and as we expand, it bumps into the 3-column layout. Nice.